In the modern automotive world, especially for the consumer market, there's not a lot of Cinderella or underdog storylines, where you have a brand that maybe wasn't always the most popular, or a brand that's had a tough time, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they had this resurgence. Well, Infiniti is well on its way to becoming that Cinderella story. Today I'm sitting next to the 2022 Infiniti QX60, a vehicle that's been completely redesigned for this model year. But also, when you take a look back at the recent history for Infiniti, a lot of buyers have been complaining about the CVT transmission, or that the technology is far behind its closest rivals, or even the fact that just when it comes to the overall value, that most likely consumers are going to look elsewhere. But in today's video, I think we're going to find out that Infiniti has made a return. And this vehicle right here, the QX60, is going to be a huge part of that, and already we're beginning to see the ripple effects. So in this video, we're going to take a deep dive into the 2022 Infiniti QX60. We're going to see how it compares to its closest rivals, such as the Acura MDX and Lexus RX 350. And also see why, if you are looking for a comfortable third row crossover that also gives you some engagement behind the wheel, then maybe taking a look at the QX60 might be a great decision. Now, before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout and thank you to Infiniti of Norwood in Norwood, Massachusetts, for allowing me to do this review. I also want to give a huge shout and thank you to Adam, who is the general manager at Infiniti of Norwood, for inviting me down here to check this vehicle out. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Infiniti inventory. Also, before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you're notified every time a new video goes live on the channel. And so, without wasting any further time, let's get right in this review. When we think of three-row luxury crossovers, our minds immediately go to the European brands. But traditionally, manufacturers such as Acura, Lexus, and Infiniti have fared quite well, usually finding themselves ahead of the Germans when it pertains to sales volume. The QX60 has been Infiniti's bread and butter since 2015, but without any major update up until 2022, they were always looked to as being the third option amongst its domestic rivals. Now with a completely new exterior design, interior layout, and updated technology features, the days of overlooking this brand are now over, and it just might be time to consider this three-row crossover as being a serious threat to the Acura MDX and Lexus RX. Starting off with pricing, our model today is a Sensory, coming in at just under $60,000. It's no secret that the QX60 is directly related to the Nissan Pathfinder, as exterior dimensions and even some of the cosmetic styling cues are very similar. However, Infiniti sprinkled in some unique characteristics that sets it apart from its cousin. Despite being underpinned by the same chassis as the outgoing model, changes in ride quality and overall refinement transforms this crossover into being both sporty and luxurious in a way that its predecessor just couldn't offer. While the Pathfinder has taken the initiative to be the more adventurous of the two, the QX60 will have a ground clearance of 6.7 inches, which should be enough to take on unplowed roads during the winter. Being one of the last in its market to receive a major overhaul, getting the outward appearance right is just as crucial as offering a great tech package for consumers in 2022. For this new generation, the QX60 is streamlined and carries itself much more confidently than it did in the past, as the angular front fascia, reshaped LED headlights, and a balanced mixture of gloss black and chrome accents creates a great first impression. While it shows relation to the outgoing model, the combination of youthful aesthetics and smoother body lines to go along with its overall reserved on-road demeanor is an accurate representation for what this crossover is offering buyers. Moving over to the side profile, all QX60 trims except for the Pure will come equipped with 20-inch alloy wheels, which does affect ride quality, but after a lengthy drive, we believe much of the rigidity can be attributed to the suspension, as the QX60's composure on smoother roads reflects its luxurious nature, and when cornering, does provide confidence on back roads. You'll have color contrasting side mirrors with turn signal indicators to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. Then coming around to the back, The rounder rear fascia and thinner LED taillights gives the QX60 a trendy look, while also being a departure from the understated road presence that we saw last generation. By opting for a sophisticated design and incorporating chrome accents for the final third of this crossover, Infiniti is making it clear that the QX60 is not just a more affordable alternative to European competitors, but that its primary focus is being an upscale, family-friendly SUV. Under the hood, the QX60 is powered by a 3.5-liter V6 engine, producing 295 horsepower and 270 pound-feet of torque. But grabbing everyone's attention is the 9-speed automatic transmission sourced by ZF that replaces the CVT used on the prior model year. To be discussed in further detail during the test drive, this 3-year-old crossover now feels spry with a touch of some athleticism, as 0 to 60 times come in under 7 seconds. But there's no confusion that the QX60 is in fact a luxury vehicle at the end of the day, as the driving dynamics will appeal to consumers with families. Being a front-wheel drive biased platform, you will have a choice between front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. And for fuel economy, you're looking at right around 20 miles per gallon in the city and 25 miles per gallon on the highway. Stepping inside, you're greeted by heated, ventilated, and massaging leather trimmed seats for both the driver and passenger, with both occupants up front also receiving memory seat functionality. The same goes for the leather-wrapped steering wheel, as it is power adjustable, so you can find the ideal positioning for optimal comfort while driving. The theme of premium quality continues for the rest of the interior trim pieces, as soft touch materials find their way on the dashboard, center console, and armrests. In front of you, on the Sensory, a 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster helps modernize the cabin, and by using the buttons mounted on the left side of the steering wheel, you can scroll through vehicle settings and customize what you see in front of you. Resolution and quality is what you'd expect in this price range, and most importantly, it's on par with its closest rivals. By opting for the $1,500 Vision package, a head-up display will provide additional tech to amplify your experience. Then moving over to the infotainment system, you'll have a 12.3-inch touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay, but Android users will have to still plug in their phones. Onboard navigation and the 17-speaker Bose sound system adds a few extra goodies on the QX60. And best of all, when compared to other Japanese luxury brands in this market, this head unit is very user-friendly. Found on the center console is a rotary dial and quick access buttons to get you to different menus. But the responsiveness of this screen allows you to exclusively use the infotainment system as a touchscreen without frustratingly dealing with lagging. On the Sensory, a front and rear backup camera with trajectory, a top view camera, and front and rear parking sensors makes parking the QX60 rather easy. Below, all the climate control settings and buttons for the 3-level heated and ventilated seats are all within arm's reach, but also the design of this layout is a cleaner and classier look compared to last generation. Making our way towards the center console, we do have a wireless phone charging pad with a USB and USB-C input. The QX60 does have a drive mode selector, including an individualized mode where you can find the right balance that reflects your driving style. For the center storage compartment, there's more than enough room for smaller items. And rounding out the front seating area, standard for all QX60 models is a panoramic moonroof that lets in a lot of natural light to the interior. Now moving on to the second row, we're going to start off on the passenger side. And believe it or not, this seat is adjusted all the way back and somewhat on a recline, and I have plenty of legroom to work with here, which I wouldn't be complaining too much being around the height of 5'5", but this vehicle is offering a lot of interior space. Now, there are a few things to point out, because the second row seats are on rails, so you can slide them forwards and backwards, which if you do have people in the third row, you can at least give them some extra room, but also it gives you easier access to that third row. Headroom, there's plenty of it, even with the massive panoramic moonroof, which lets in a lot of natural light. You can probably see this on camera as well, that for a car with a darker interior, you can actually see me, and I don't need to really worry about that interior lighting as much. So it really makes the interior seem a lot bigger, but also it just brightens up the cabin overall. Now, when it comes to comfort level, these seats do provide a good amount of support. Also, they're very plush as well. So I think whether you are an average size adult or a child, you're going to be very comfortable back here for sure. Now, moving on to the center seat. Our model does have the center seat in place, so you can get captain's chairs on the QX60, but there are some good placements for my feet. The floor is completely flat, so you can definitely fit a third person in the second row. Also, shoulder room really isn't that bad at all either. So I think that when it comes to being a family-friendly vehicle, this is really great to see, but also very much on par with its closest rivals. And then moving on to the driver's side, this seat is adjusted a little bit further back because we had the memory seat function on this model, so it automatically came backwards. And I still have plenty of legroom to work with here. So whether you do have average size adults in the back, maybe you're going on a family road trip, or if you just have kids on a weekly commute, I think everyone is going to be comfortable in the first and second row, but we'll have to wait and see about that third row. Also back here, you will have climate control to go along with 3-level heated outboard seats. We have a USB-C and USB input, also a 3-pronged outlet, which allows you to maybe plug in a laptop or an iPad. Also, as you can tell on this model, we do have the sunshades in place, so that way it gives you a bit more privacy when you are on a longer road trip, but also on a sunny day like today, that sunlight doesn't have to beam down into the second row while your kids are on their iPads or laptops. And rounding out the second row seating area, you do get a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Quickly taking a look at the third row seating area, as you can tell, it is a bit of a squeeze, even for someone at my height, around 5'5". Now, of course, as I talked about earlier, this seat can be adjusted a bit further up because it is on rails, but most likely, you're only going to have small kids back here. There's no way you're squeezing average size adults, and that's really not something you would expect for a vehicle in this segment. But when it comes to headroom, though, there is plenty of it. I'm not going to complain in that regard, but legroom for sure is definitely going to be the issue. But of course, for a lot of vehicles in this market, such as the Acura MDX and Lexus RX 350, you're just not going to be able to fit an average size adult back here, and I don't really think that that would be the expectations moving forward for this vehicle. Also back here for third row occupants, you do have a USB input on both sides of the third row seating area, and also 2 cup holders on both sides as well. And between both third row seats, there will be a place for a smartphone. Now coming around to the back, you're going to receive a power lift gate. And inside, behind the third row seats, you're looking at right around 14.5 cubic feet of room, which is definitely not class leading by any means, but certainly more than enough room for grocery shopping, but also my camera gear today. So that's 2 bags of camera gear, a gimbal box, and a tripod, although the mats for the QX60 definitely played a role in how much I was able to fit back here overall. Then beneath the floor mat, you are going to have more storage compartments for smaller items, such as maybe a first aid kit, but also possibly even electronics, where if you have your kids with you and they have their laptops and their iPads, and you're going to leave this vehicle unattended for a while, you can store them back here so that way they're out of sight, and that way they're safe and secure if people are around that's possibly looking for items to steal. Then with the third row seats folded, you're looking at right around 41.5 cubic feet of room, which is pretty standard for a vehicle of this size. Better yet, even though you have to manually lower the third row seats, with the press of a button, which you can find on the left side of the cargo area, you can bring them back to use automatically, which I think is really great to see, even though this feature is not uncommon in this segment. But for a luxury vehicle and for Infiniti to make a great first impression with this crossover, that is one feature that I'm really glad made its way on the QX60. And then finally, for the second row seats, once those are folded, you're going to have right around 75.5 cubic feet of room. So all around practical. It's a great family vehicle, best of all. But if you do need to maybe carry items, maybe you're moving, or maybe you're going on a camping trip or a road trip, you can definitely fit everything you have back here, especially if you don't have those third row seats in use. And then finally, once you're done, just press the button and the liftgate will close automatically. So we are now behind the wheel of the 2022 Infiniti QX60. I really want to see how this compares to the Acura MDX and also the Lexus RX 350. I truly believe those are the two real close competitors for this vehicle, because I think a lot of people are going to throw in the BMW X5, Mercedes-Benz GLE 350, and Audi Q7. There's only a couple problems with that. One is pricing. So the Infiniti QX60 is about $5,000 to $8,000 more affordable than some of these vehicles. But also, for the GLE and the X5, they're not traditional 3-row SUVs. In fact, they come standard with 2 rows. So I don't know how those two vehicles come into play and how they're compared head-to-head with an Infiniti QX60. Whereas I think the Acura MDX and also the Lexus RX 350 for the 2022 model are two great competitors that I think really sets the bar for what the Infiniti QX60 should be striving for. So I want to see if Infiniti has done enough to make this vehicle competitive and also make a vehicle that is one that's going to be very appealing to a lot of buyers, especially families. The first real impression for me when it comes to the Infiniti QX60 has to be the interior layout, but also the comfort level as well, because this is really important for a luxury brand and a luxury vehicle. The fact that we have really good technology with a full digital gauge cluster, also this 12.3-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, also onboard navigation, I think is better than the MDX and the Lexus RX 350, because you do have a touchscreen, but also it's paired with a rotary dial and quick access button. It's better than that trackpad that we see in the Acura MDX, and we are seeing Lexus kind of deviate away from that. But the fact that Infiniti really focused on the user friendliness of the infotainment system, also the more in-depth display for the digital gauge cluster, really, in my opinion, goes a long way. And even though some journalists are going to complain about the fact that it is very similar to what we see in Nissan products, I think it's definitely on par and if not better than some of its closer Japanese rivals. Also, interior layout, very comfortable. These seats provide a good amount of support. They're not aggressively bolstered, but they will keep you in place. The one thing I am noticing, though, is that the 20-inch wheels are definitely playing a role in how we're going over the bumps and how I'm feeling those imperfections, because I do feel every single imperfection in the road. Now, it would be a little bit more stiff than what we experience from European rivals, although, like I said before, I just don't know if I really would throw in the X5 and GLE into the conversation, just because those are not traditional 3-row SUVs. But then when it comes to the road noise or lack thereof and the insulation for the interior, there's not a lot of the outside world making its way into the cabin. So Infiniti's done a great job of working on the development for the sound deadening. So let's go around this little rotary here and see what the handling is like. I love the gear shifts of this 9-speed automatic. Very smooth. Now again, I am feeling those bumps thanks to the 20-inch wheels. Good amount of pickup there. And you're definitely going to feel the body roll. So even at around 35, 40 miles an hour, this is definitely not going to have a sports tuning suspension, and that's not what a lot of buyers are looking for in this market. But I do love the weight of the steering. It doesn't feel numb or sedated, and there is some engagement there. So I can at least have some fun on my daily commutes if I was to own one of these. But I think a lot of buyers are definitely going to love the fact that there is some engagement there, that there is some play, and that it's not really lacking the enjoyment factor that maybe you will experience with the Lexus RX 350. Now, if there was a barometer, and just imagine with me, if you will, the MDX is going to be more on the athletic performance side of things, even for like an A spec, whereas the Lexus RX 350 is going to be all about luxury, laid back, soft. The Infiniti QX60 falls right in the middle, where it does feel athletic to a certain degree, but it's not going to be giving you that on the edge of your seat experience. But it's not going to be numb or boring possibly like the RX 350. So it falls right in line, it falls right in the middle. I think it's a happy medium for a lot of buyers, and that's why I feel that the Infiniti QX60 is definitely going to get a lot of attention from buyers with families, because it is comfortable, but it's also fun as well. What is surprising for a vehicle in this market, and one that's not performance driven or performance oriented, is just how thick and aggressive the steering wheel is. The 10 and 2 positions are very aggressive, but even the 9 and 3s really give you a good amount of support if you do prefer driving in that style. Also, you do have paddle shifters as well, which I will use when we get on the highway. When it comes to front vision, you do have plenty of it. Nice panoramic view, by the way. Also, A-pillars are somewhat aggressive, but don't create that much of a blind spot. Also, the side mirrors are in a good position as well, so I can see what is in my blind spots. Then looking out back, the rear seats, that you can actually fold those headrests, so that way you can give yourself a bit more vision to work with when looking out the rear view mirror and also that rear window. So let's see how it performs on this little back road here, even though the QX60 is a pretty decently sized crossover. The steering does provide a good amount of feedback, gives me some confidence at lower speeds. Love the sound of the V6 too. Nice brake feel. You don't really need to depress on that brake pedal that much at all to stop. So definitely liking the way this vehicle feels on the road, but also just in daily driving situations. I think it feels very well refined, better than last generation, but best of all, there is no mistaking this vehicle compared to a QX50, because one, you don't have the CVT, and that's really been a cloud that's been over the heads of Infiniti for quite some time. But also when it comes to the seating position and how the QX60 performs, it doesn't drive like a car. So it definitely has a traditional SUV feel. And the way you sit in this vehicle, you sit pretty high up as well. So you have a lot of ground clearance and you can see everything that's around you. So giving you that safety that you want to experience in a vehicle like this. Now we're gonna go in eco mode just for the heck of it, which will turn off the engines so the auto start stop function does get activated. I want to see how this does perform in eco mode if fuel economy is a top priority for you for a vehicle of this size and in its segment. So in eco mode, again, doesn't really change up the driving dynamics that much. Steering does loosen up a bit, but you know, it's not going to be a drastic change where you're going to be like, I'm going to prefer sport mode over auto or eco. I think it's really just going to be dependent on what you want during your driving experience. I think sport to me is what I prefer. That's what I'm going to stick with. Also, that disengages the auto start stop feature, which I really can't stand in any vehicle that I review. But really though, the reason why I harp on the fact that this crossover is designed to specifically take on the MDX and Lexus RX 350 is because it's really the only main competitors that they need to focus on right now. Infiniti has never been a brand that's taken on BMW, Audi, or Mercedes-Benz head-to-head, but also in this segment, you don't really have a vehicle in this price range that really is a true competitor to them from the Germans. I think you could throw in the Volvo XC90, but again, it is a bit more expensive, so it really just comes down to what your price range is as well. But I gotta be honest here, I think the Infiniti QX60 is a genuinely impressive vehicle. I am very surprised here because I've driven Infinitis quite a bit over the last few years, and really outside of the Q50 Red Sport, I haven't really been impressed. I haven't really been somebody that's gonna go out and buy one. But I think the QX60 is a vehicle that a lot of Americans can really feel confident in their choice. Where if you don't want to have a vehicle like the MDX that's really all about performance, and you don't want to have the RX 350 that's really a bit too laid back, not as luxurious, not as responsive, then I think the QX60 is going to really fit the bill. It's going to really appeal to your desires in a vehicle. So as promised, gonna use the paddle shifters as we get on the highway. So I'm gonna give myself a bit more room. Start off in third gear. Quick shifting. Also, nice long gear ratio as well. So if you are somebody that's a bit more of an enthusiast, you can use the paddle shifters. They do respond very nicely, but also I love the gear ratios on this vehicle. For a crossover that's not supposed to be all that sporty, even though it does fall in line between what the MDX is offering and what the RX350 isn't offering, I think this is a really nice vehicle when it comes to that performance. So all in all, after this test drive, I think Infiniti has done more than enough to make this vehicle competitive with its closest rivals, but also make it very appealing to a lot of buyers on a budget, maybe even buyers who want something a bit more luxurious than a Toyota Highlander or Hyundai Palisade and Kia Telluride. I think Infiniti has done a fantastic job with this vehicle, and the praise is certainly well deserved. So to wrap up this review, what are my final thoughts and takeaways for the 2022 QX60? Was it worth the wait? After all this time not being able to get my hands on this crossover, am I impressed? Do I feel as though this vehicle is enough to take on the Acura MDX and the current Lexus RX350? And for me personally, I think absolutely. It's done enough where it differentiates itself from the Nissan Pathfinder. I feel as though it rides better than the Pathfinder. It also performs better as well. But then compared to its closest rivals, the MDX and the RX350, it's a nice happy medium. It's not an athletic vehicle like the MDX, but it's not soft, too tame, and laid back like the RX350. This vehicle does a nice job of keeping you engaged behind the wheel, while at the same time being comfortable for you and your family. Best of all, for a crossover in 2022, and amongst its closest rivals, I feel as though the technology is certainly on par, but also better than some of its closest competition. Because the fact that you have a touchscreen that's very easy to use, also very responsive as well, with a rotary dial and quick access buttons, it's better than what we see in the Acura MDX and also the Lexus RX350. But personally, I think this is a great stepping stone and milestone for the brand, because if this is any indication of what we're going to expect to receive in the future, I think a lot of buyers are going to return to Infiniti, and more specifically to the QX60, because when you compare it to other three-row crossovers in this price range, I think the value that's offering is definitely on par with other vehicles in this market. Now, like I said during the test drive, I wouldn't necessarily compare this to a BMW X5, Mercedes-Benz GLE, or even an Audi Q7. Those vehicles are more expensive, but also the way this crossover is designed, the way the interior layout is, this seems to be more purpose-built and purpose-driven to compete with Acura and Lexus, and I think they've definitely done that for sure, especially with the powertrain, also the 9-speed automatic transmission, and of course the technology. This is exactly what you want to see in 2022. But best of all, and this is my lasting impression, is the interior comfort. They've done a fantastic job, especially at this price point. But also, if you aren't looking for a Sensory or Autograph, I think the Pure and the Luxe is going to provide you a lot of good features that you're definitely going to be impressed with. And I think, especially at its price point, you're definitely going to love. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. Also, make sure to follow me on Instagram at Boston Autoblog so you can see what I'm up to and what vehicles I'll be featuring in the future. And I will see you guys next time.